A glamorous night at a millionaire's mansion turns into pure horror when guests witness Lucas Hale and his lover kicking his pregnant wife in front of everyone. They believe she's alone, that no one will defend her. They have no idea who she's connected to, much less expect the two men who walk through those doors. What happens next becomes a clash of arrogance, revenge, and justice executed with absolute precision. And believe me, you'll want to hold your breath until we get into the story. Tell us what time you're listening and where you're tuning in from. Leave a comment below. We'd love to hear from you. The Hale mansion stood atop the hills like a monument built from ego and old money. Its tall windows gleamed with golden light. Crystal chandeliers cast reflections across the marble floor. A hired quartet played soft classical music that drifted through the main hall like a ribbon of elegance. Each guest was dressed in their finest attire, held champagne glasses, and murmured about Lucas Hale's new business venture. On the surface, the night seemed perfect. No one expected violence to erupt in a place designed for wealth and vanity. Emma Hale stood silently near the long banquet table. 6 months pregnant, she seemed fragile, though she retained a gentle beauty that belied the pretentiousness surrounding her. One hand rested on her belly, her fingers moving in soft circles, as if trying to soothe the tiny life within. She smiled politely as people passed by, though no one lingered long enough to speak with her. She had become invisible in her own home. A shadow sunk amidst costly conversations. Across the room, Lucas Hale watched her with cold irritation. He wore a tailored navy suit and an expression that warned others not to pry too deeply into his personal affairs. His lover, Stella Rowan, clung to his arm, whispering in his ear, with red lips that smiled maliciously after each phrase. Stella wore a silver dress that shimmered under the lights. She relished the attention, the power, and above all, the humiliation she could inflict on Emma simply by existing. The music softened as the guests applauded the quartet. The change in sound created an eerie silence. It was in that delicate stillness that Stella's heels clicked on the floor. She walked toward Emma unhurriedly, undoubtedly with a deliberate grace that made a few heads turn. Lucas followed a few steps behind, adjusting his cufflinks and pretending it was an innocent stroll. Emma noticed them when Stella was already too close. She instinctively stepped back. The movement was small, but full of caution. Her free hand moved protectively toward her stomach. She forced a smile and said softly, "I don't want any trouble tonight." Stella bowed her head. Her smile didn't reach her eyes. Trouble finds those who deserve it. Her voice was just loud enough to attract attention without sounding aggressive. That was her specialty. Cruelty wrapped in sweetness. Emma opened her mouth to reply, but the words never formed. Without warning, Stella swung her leg back and delivered a sharp, repulsive kick to Emma's shin. The impact cracked. Emma gasped and stumbled forward, reaching for the edge of the table for support. Some guests gasped, though none moved quickly enough to intervene. Before Emma could regain her balance, Lucas stood beside Stella, offering no assistance to his wife. He didn't ask if she was hurt. Instead, he launched a second kick. This time, it struck her in the side, just below the ribs. The force sent her sprawling to the marble floor. Her breath came in a painful cry as she instinctively curled up to protect her baby. A glass shattered somewhere behind them. The music stopped as the quartet gasped. The room froze. The guests stared wide-eyed. Some covered their mouths with their hands. Others raised their phones to record discreetly, afraid to act, but eager to capture the scandal. Emma tried to sit up. Her arms were trembling. Her hair fell across her face. Tears slid down her cheeks, mingling with the glimmer of the floor. She managed to whisper, almost inaudibly, "Please stop, please!" Lucas took a step back as if the sound of her voice bothered him. Stella laughed softly. The sound was sharp and cruel, bouncing off the marble walls. She leaned forward slightly and said, "Look at you. How pathetic. Perhaps you should stop pretending you belong here." Emma looked up. Her eyes were glassy with pain and confusion. "Why are you doing this? I never hurt you." Lucas huffed and rolled his shoulders, as if trying to release tension after a long day. "Stop acting like a victim. You tripped. Don't embarrass yourself in front of everyone." Her voice was loud enough to command authority, but so cold that it extinguished any trace of compassion. A woman near the bar murmured, "She's pregnant. Someone must help her." Yet no one moved. Wealth made people cautious. Wealth silenced them. Emma tried to sit up again, her hand clutching her belly. Her breathing was short and labored. The baby moved inside her, reminding her that she wasn't alone. Fear coursed through her body like ice water. Estella didn't give her time. She approached and raised her foot as if she were ready to strike her again. Her dress shimmered with every movement. She smiled for the cameras she knew were recording. The moment thrilled her. She was the center of attention. She had the millionaire. She had the power. And she had the opportunity to destroy the woman who had once had the life she desired. Emma shuddered and shielded her stomach with both arms. Her voice trembled. "Please, not the baby." Some guests finally shouted, "Stop it!" But it was too late. The damage was done. The ugliness of the scene had stained the night forever. Inside the grand mansion, where money bought everything but humanity, the cruel kick from the millionaire and his lover became the spark that ignited the storm waiting beyond those gates. The moment Emma fell to the floor, the mansion seemed to exhale a long, trembling sigh. The elegant atmosphere that had filled the drawing room minutes before crumbled like shattered glass. The music had already stopped, but now it seemed as if the walls themselves were holding their breath. The guests stood motionless. Every pair of eyes was fixed on the woman curled up on the marble, clutching her stomach as if she feared her child might slip from her grasp. A cluster of champagne glasses on a nearby table rattled from the impact of its fall. One tipped over, spilling a pale trickle of liquid that spread across the polished surface before silently dripping to the floor. The sound was soft, yet it cut through the tense silence with painful clarity. Emma tried to sit up again. Her elbows trembled under the weight of her own crow. She raised her head only halfway before a sharp pain forced her to lower it again. Her hair was tangled. Mascara ran down her cheeks. The silk of her maternity dress clung to her side, where sweat and fear had soaked the fabric. She blinked several times to clear her vision, but everything around her seemed blurry, as if she were underwater. A murmur rippled through the crowd. Did he really kick her? "She's pregnant. What's wrong with them? Should we call someone? I can't believe what I just saw." "Oh." These whispered voices floated in the air, but they did nothing to help her. The guests remained rooted to the spot. Some looked terrified. Others were more curious than horrified, and were already raising their phones high enough to get a better angle. A middle-aged woman near the bar placed her hand on her chest. She whispered to the man beside her, "She needs help." Why isn't anyone stepping forward? The man looked away, unable to meet her gaze because he knew the truth. Helping would mean becoming a target. Everyone in that mansion understood Lucas Hale's power. That power made people doubt. That power kept her feet firmly on the ground. Emma felt the cold marble against her cheek. The surface was soft, almost strangely comforting. She let out a shaky sigh. Her hands instinctively moved to her stomach, forming a protective embrace. She murmured soft words only the baby could hear. Stay with me. Please. Stay with me. I'm here." Her voice broke. The fear that gripped her shattered the fragile silence once more. Above her, the chandelier's light reflected in small pools of liquid on the floor. The reflections shimmered in shades of gold and white, shifting with every slight change in the room. The beauty of those flashes felt wrong. Nothing in that moment deserved beauty. A few steps away, a young waiter in an immaculate white shirt covered his mouth with both hands. She wanted to run to her. Her eyes pleaded with someone to say something, for someone older or braver to move first. But when she looked at Lucas, she took a step back in fear. Lucas was only a few steps away from Emma. His posture was relaxed, his hands in his pockets. He looked more annoyed than guilty. Estea, standing slightly behind him, wore a triumphant smile that appeared whenever someone gasped. She seemed to relish the attention. The more astonished the guests were, the higher she lifted her chin. Emma tried once more to sit down. Her arms trembled violently. Her breath caught in her throat as a sharp pain shot down her side. She groaned and closed her eyes. For a moment she stopped trying to get up and just breathed through the pain. The baby moved inside her. The feeling was faint, but unmistakable. A wave of relief washed over her, and she murmured again, "I'm here, I promise." The whisper reached a woman standing near the center of the room. She was an older woman, elegantly dressed, whose heart broke at the sight. She took a half step forward before her husband grabbed her wrist to stop her. "No," she whispered firmly. "Don't interfere." "Oh, but she's on the ground," the woman replied incredulously. "She's pregnant, and he kicked her. They both did it." Her husband shook his head, a mixture of fear and resignation in his voice. "Do you know what Lucas could do to our business? Please, I beg you." The older woman swallowed her words. She lowered her gaze. Her shoulders tensed with helpless frustration. Another guest lowered herself slightly to her knees, as if preparing to help Emma. But before she could take a step, Lucas turned his head and glared at her. The intensity of that gaze froze her. She straightened up and immediately stepped back. Emma raised a hand and extended it toward someone, toward anyone. Her fingers opened and closed as if she were silently pleading for help. She didn't know who to look for, nor did she know if she would be strong enough to get up when someone arrived. All he knew was that he couldn't stay on the ground any longer. The marble was too cold. The pain in his side was increasing. His breathing became short and shallow. The baby moved again. The movement was gentle, but urgent. She tried to smile at that small reminder of life, but the smile faded as another wave of pain shot through her back. She closed her eyes and rested her forehead against the floor. A man with a camera around his neck whispered near the entrance, "This is going to blow up on the internet." He raised the camera slightly, but hesitated. Even he recognized the cruelty of photographing a pregnant woman in pain. Even so, the temptation to capture a multi-million-dollar scandal shimmered in her lens. A glass rolled across the marble floor and struck Emma's arm. The slight sound made her flinch. Suddenly, every detail in the room seemed louder. The hum of the air conditioner, the clinking of a bracelet, the click of heels from a guest trying to move unnoticed. A waiter dropped a fork near the dessert table. Every noise reminded her how exposed she was. He raised his head just enough to see Estella standing there with her arms crossed. Estella tilted her head and whispered something to Lucas. He smiled disdainfully, without saying a word. His silence humiliated her more than any words. Emma inhaled slowly and tried to get up again. Her body was unsteady. Her hands trembled. The world spun around her slightly. She felt the gaze of the entire room upon her, as if she were a spectacle in a cruel theater. A man muttered near the door, "How can she keep trying to get up after being kicked like that?" Someone answered, "Because she has no choice. No one is helping her." Emma placed her hands on the ground. She rose until she was on her knees. Her breathing was unsteady, but her determination burned like a small flame that refused to go out. And yet, not a single guest moved to help the pregnant woman struggling in the center of a room filled with wealth, crystal lights, and silent cowardice. She didn't even know if she would be strong enough to get up when someone arrived. She only knew that she couldn't stay on the floor any longer. The marble was too cold. The pain in his side was increasing. His breathing became short and shallow. The baby moved again. The movement was gentle, but urgent. She tried to smile at this small reminder of life, but the smile faded as another wave of pain shot through her back. As if he believed he still held every inch of control within the mansion, he stopped just a few steps from her. The gleaming marble reflected his tailored suit and the cruel expression that barely curled at one corner of his lips. "Stand up," he said. His voice had the tone of a man irritated by a minor annoyance, not that of someone who had just kicked his pregnant wife in front of dozens of people. "Stop making a fool of yourself, sleazeless." Emma lifted her head, though the movement sent a painful jolt down her spine. She tried to speak, but the words seemed stuck in her throat. Her lips parted slightly, and only a soft, broken breath escaped. Lucas clicked his tongue, as if he were scolding a child. "That's why people don't respect you. You crumble under pressure. You always have." An uncomfortable murmur rippled through the nearby guests. No one dared to interrupt him. Her voice filled the room like a cold shadow. The lights above them shone softly, casting a pale glow on her face. It made the scene seem even more unreal. Estella stood beside him with a confidence that forced several guests to look away. She placed a perfectly manicured hand on Lucas's shoulder and spoke in a tone of feigned sympathy. "Poor thing. She can't even handle a small fall. Pregnancy must be harder for some women." Lucas chuckled softly. "She thinks that if she trembles and cries enough, people will pity her." She looked around the room as if inviting everyone to agree. "Do you really think I kicked her?" Emma trips over her own feet. "Everyone knows." Some guests exchanged awkward glances. Most remained silent. A man near the fireplace opened his mouth as if to speak, but Lucas gave him such a sharp look that he immediately closed it. Emma managed to raise one knee and tried to sit up. Her body trembled violently. She moaned and clutched her stomach. The baby stirred, and she murmured a small prayer in her mind. She couldn't afford to fall again. She couldn't let fear consume her. But when she tried to get up, Lucas took a step toward her. His shadow fell over Emma like a curtain. "Don't even try it," he said coldly. "You started this show, not me. No, Estella. You." Emma looked at him, confused, with pain and bewilderment in her eyes. "I didn't do anything," she whispered through tears. "They both kicked me." In front of everyone, Lucas laughed. Not a big laugh, but a dry, cruel laugh. "Nobody saw what you say they saw. You slipped up. You always slip up. Don't make a mountain out of a molehill." Behind him, Estella nodded dramatically. "Exactly." She lunged at me and lost her balance. "I'm the victim here. Look at my dress. It almost ripped." Her lie hung in the air like a foul odor. Several guests frowned at the dress, but none dared to contradict her. Estella lifted her skirt slightly and pointed to a small crease near the hem. "Look at this. This is what she did. And yet she's the one making a big deal out of it." Emma shook her head. Her voice trembled. "I would never attack you." She was just standing there. "You." Lucas sighed, as if he were tired of listening to her. "Emma, please. Everyone knows you exaggerate your emotions. That's why you don't have any friends here anymore." He raised a hand and waved it toward the guests. "Ask them. Ask anyone." Everyone saw her overreact, as she always does. Her manipulation slithered through the crowd. Some guests lowered their gaze, ashamed of their silence, but too afraid to contradict the powerful millionaire. Emma choked back a sob. "Lucas, you know the truth. Please, stop lying." Lucas bent down slightly until his face was close to hers. His smile was thin and cruel. "The truth is what I say it is. And right now, the truth is that you tried to put on a show in my house, in front of my guests, and then you fell for it on your own." Emma felt her heart twist. Each word was like another kick, not to her body, but to the last vestiges of dignity she had left. She tried to get up again, but Lucas placed a hand on her shoulder, not violently, but firmly enough to stop her. "Don't get up yet," he murmured. "You'll stay on the floor until I finish speaking." When several gasps were heard among the guests, the young waiter from before took a small step forward, but fear paralyzed him again. Estella crossed her arms and nodded her head with a feigned expression of innocence. "Really, Emma? You're making Lucas look like a monster. Why do you keep trying to ruin his night? He has a reputation to uphold." "A reputation he's destroying himself," Emma whispered. Her voice was painful but firm. Lucas's jaw tightened. His expression darkened. "Be careful," he said. "You're treading on very dangerous ground with me. Don't make things worse." "It's Juan," someone in the back muttered. "What else could possibly get worse?" He kicked her, but Lucas's attention was fixed on Emma. He leaned in a little closer, and his cold eyes pierced her. "If you tell one more lie about me or Estella, I swear you'll regret it." Emma gasped. She could feel her pulse racing. Her fear radiated through the center of the room. She felt the weight of dozens of eyes watching her, waiting to see if she would finally break. Lucas stood up again and looked at the crowd as if he were giving a press conference. "For the record, my wife is unstable tonight. Stress, hormones, you know." He gestured vaguely toward her stomach. "Pregnancy makes some women dramatic." The same guests who had gasped earlier shifted uncomfortably. They knew something was wrong, but fear demanded silence. Emma looked at the man she had once loved, the man she had trusted, the man who was now twisting reality into something grotesque. Her voice trembled as she whispered, "I didn't do anything wrong." Lucas smiled and said loudly, so the whole mansion could hear, "You never do anything wrong. Yet somehow, everything always ends up being your fault." And with that last accusation, he turned away. Her lie hung over the room like a dark cloud, at least until the storm waiting outside finally burst through the door. The room remained thick with tension, a heavy fog of disbelief and fear clinging to every crystal glass and every polished surface. Emma remained on her knees on the floor, her hands trembling as she tried to steady herself once more. Her breathing came in short, ragged waves. The pain in her side throbbed like a warning drum. She knew one wrong move could send her tumbling again. She knew her baby could sense her fear. But while Emma struggled to stay composed, Stella Rowan seemed to thrive on the chaos. Stella stepped forward, letting the heels of her silver shoes announce her presence with a rhythmic, sharp click on the marble floor. Each step seemed to assert that she was in control of the moment, that she was in control of the man beside her, and he believed he had the right to humiliate Emma with impunity. He stopped just inches from Emma, the man who was now twisting reality into something grotesque. His voice trembled as he whispered, "I didn't do anything wrong." Yet Lucas smiled and said loudly, so the whole mansion could hear, "You never do anything wrong. Yet somehow, everything always ends up being your fault." and with that final accusation, he turned away. Her lie hung over the room like a dark cloud, at least until the storm waiting outside finally burst through the door. Stella smiled, slowly and deliberately, as she lifted the ring higher. "Do you recognize him, Emma?" she asked, her voice sweet, but sharp as poison. "Lucas gave him to me last week. He said he belonged to a woman who knows how to treat him well." Emma blinked through her tears. She couldn't speak. She felt her throat close up with every breath. Stella leaned down until her face was level with Emma's. Her perfume floated in the air, sweet and overwhelming. "Don't feel bad," she continued calmly. "Some women are wives. Others are replacements, and some should never have stayed." Lucas crossed his arms and looked at Stella with quiet satisfaction. She seemed to be admiring a performance rather than witnessing cruelty. As if the humiliation wasn't enough, Stella pulled her phone out of her small silver purse. She tapped the screen several times. A bright photo appeared. She turned it toward the guests. The image showed Lucas and Stella on a beach, embracing under a sunset sky. "This was taken while you were resting at home, Emma," Stella said calmly. Lucas needed a real partner, someone who wouldn't turn off the energy in a room, someone who will truly make him happy. A muffled sound came from the back of the room. A woman dropped her napkin. Another man shook his head in disgust. The cruelty was becoming increasingly obvious, but no one found the courage to intervene. Stella swiped the screen to another photo. It was a picture of Lucas hugging her from behind as she kissed his cheek. "He said this was the best day of his life," she announced proudly. Lucas let out a small laugh. "She was," he said. "Emma never gave me anything like that." The words pierced Emma more deeply than any kick. She lowered her head. Her hair fell over her face like a curtain, shielding her from the stares fixed on her misery. But Stella wasn't finished yet. She placed her hand on Lucas's chest and spoke loudly enough for everyone to hear. "We're planning a trip next month. Italy, then France, maybe Greece. Lucas wants to propose to me somewhere romantic. He says I deserve something great." A wave of surprise swept through the guests. Lucas did nothing to deny it. Instead, he lifted Stella's hand and kissed it gently. The gesture was meant to be intimate, but in the context of that cruel night, it felt like a weapon. Emma's breath caught in her throat. Her eyes burned. Her fingers clenched against the floor. Stella looked at her with a satisfied smile. "You see, Emma, you're no longer part of his life. You're a burden he's carried for too long." Emma gathered her strength to speak. Her voice was thin and trembling. "I'm taking your son, Thor." Stella shrugged indifferently. "There are children everywhere. Lucas can have another one, with someone who really matters." Lucas nodded slightly, as if her logic was perfectly reasonable. "You're right," she said. "It's not about the baby. It's about your refusal to accept reality." A murmur rippled through the guests. More eyes narrowed toward Lucas and Stella. The cruelty was now too obvious, too intentional, too ruthless. But Stella enjoyed every second. She walked around Emma in a slow circle. Her heels clicked like a countdown. She stopped behind Emma and leaned in to whisper close to her ear. "Do you know what he told me the first night we were together? He said you were fragile. Too fragile. Too weak for the life he wanted." Emma closed her eyes tightly. Her whole body trembled with pain and humiliation. Stella turned back to face her and brushed her hair aside in one swift motion. She held up the diamond ring again. "This is proof that he chose me," she declared. "Not you. Not the woman on the ground. Not the woman who can barely stand." Emma shook her head slowly. "I never hurt you." "Why are you doing this?" Stella laughed. "Because I can." Her voice echoed through the room, chilling every witness. A young woman near the buffet whispered to her companion, "This is too much. He's crossing the line." But not even she approached. Stella smiled again, absorbing all the attention. "You're nothing, Emma," she concluded with a tone heavy with satisfaction. Nothing more than a chapter he was ready to erase. He returned to Lucas's side and linked his arm with his. The two stood there like the king and queen of cruelty, reveling in their power. Emma stared at them, her vision blurred. For a moment, she felt the world closing in around her. But deep within her chest, beyond the pain and fear, something small and fierce began to stir. But that moment hadn't arrived yet. For now, all she could do was breathe and endure, because the storm that would change everything was already on its way. A thick silence settled over the room, heavier and colder than the marble beneath Emma's trembling hands. She kept trying to sit up. Every breath he took trembled. Every muscle in his body felt unsteady. The air around him carried the harsh sting of humiliation and fear. But none of it seemed to affect Lucas Hale. Lucas stood erect before her, adjusting his cufflinks as if preparing for a business meeting, not as if he were standing in front of the pregnant woman he had just kicked. His expression was frozen in time. The guests could see it clearly. It wasn't anger. It was right. The kind of confidence that belonged to a man who believed himself to be untouchable. She took another step toward Emma. Her shiny shoes clicked. Emma shuddered. That sound had become a warning to her, a threat disguised as elegance. "Stand up," Lucas ordered, "or stay on the floor. Anyway, I'm not going to waste another night cleaning up your messes." Emma's voice was weak and raspy. "I didn't cause anything. You attacked me." "They both attacked me." The atmosphere grew tense. Her words were fragile, but they held truth. Some guests exchanged discreet glances. Telling the truth in front of Lucas was like lighting a match near gasoline. No one knew how he would react. Lucas tilted his head with a slight smile. It was a smile that sent chills down your spine. "You're confused. And unbalanced. I warned you about doing scenes like this." Emma blinked hard. "I'm not unbalanced. I'm hurt. You kicked me, Lucas. You kicked your pregnant wife." He inhaled slowly. "And if you repeat that lie outside this room, you'll regret it." C4. Estella stood beside him. Her silver dress shimmered as she moved, her perfectly manicured fingernail gently tapping Lucas's arm. "Lucas, darling, he's just trying to get sympathy. She wants people to feel sorry for her." Estella leaned toward him in an intimate tone, but loud enough for half the room to hear. "You don't have to put up with this. Finish this." Lucas nodded slowly and looked back at Emma. "You're right. You've pushed me to the limit." He bent down slightly, not to comfort her, but to make sure she heard every word. "Let me be clear. I can leave you with nothing tonight. Do you understand? No car, no bank account, no place to live." Emma's stomach clenched. The fear on her face flickered like a candle in the wind. "Lucas, you can't leave me with nothing. I'm carrying your son." Lucas shrugged. "Children don't guarantee security. Women don't guarantee loyalty. And you've become a problem. I'm not going to let you ruin my future because you can't accept reality." A murmur rippled through the room. Someone whispered, "He's threatening her, in front of everyone." But Lucas didn't care. He kept talking. "Do you really want to talk?" he said. "Here's the truth. With one call, your accounts will be frozen by morning. With another call, you could be escorted out of this house before dawn. I can erase your name from every contract, every document, every part of my life." Emma's throat closed. "Why would you do something like that? I've never hurt you." Lucas's smile turned sharp. "You existed. And your existence bothers me." Estella let out a soft laugh beside him. Her hand traced Lucas's arm as if rewarding him for his cruelty. "Tell him the other idea," she said gently. "The one you told me in the car." Lucas raised an eyebrow. "Oh, yeah." He looked at Emma. "I also thought about sending you to live with your father for a while, away from me, away from my life, away from my plans." Emma swallowed hard. "My father lives 3 states away." Lucas shrugged. "Distance is good for clarity, and you need clarity, and I need peace." Emma's tears fell freely. Her voice broke. "Please stop. I'm not trying to ruin anything. I'm just trying to protect our baby." Lucas snorted. "Protect him from what? From reality? From stress? From the consequences?" He made a dismissive gesture with his hand. "Pregnancy isn't a shield, Emma. Not anymore." A man at the front murmured, "This is too much." But Lucas ignored it. His eyes were fixed on Emma, filled with cold certainty. He leaned in a little closer. "Listen carefully. If you ever try to defy me, if you publicly accuse me, if you insinuate that I laid a hand on you, I will dismantle your life piece by piece. I'm not threatening. I'm promising." Emma's shoulders trembled. The room blurred. Her vision faltered. She braced herself with a hand to keep from falling again. Stella took a step forward with a cruel twist of her hair. "And don't forget," she added, "the public loves confident men, not the whiny wives who trip over their own feet and blame others." Emma looked at her. "I didn't do anything to you." Stella raised her eyebrows. "You existed, that's enough. I'm sick." Lucas straightened up and walked into the room as if giving a lecture. "My wife is emotional tonight, so I expect everyone to treat this with the seriousness it deserves," he said, gesturing to Emma without looking at her. "Which means you should forget any story she tries to make up. It didn't happen tonight. Understood?" The guests didn't respond. Silence was their answer. Lucas turned to Emma to deliver the final blow. "You have no power here. None. And the sooner you accept it, the easier it will be." Emma's eyes filled with helpless rage, but she could only whisper, "You can't treat me like this." Lucas smiled. "I already did it." Cruelty spread through the room like a dark cloud. Every guest felt it. Every witness knew the truth. And yet, none knew what was already on its way. Someone else was coming. Someone who wasn't afraid of Lucas Hale. Someone who would put an end to that night forever. The air inside the mansion became stifling. A room that had once been filled with music and refined conversation had been transformed into a stage of cruelty. Emma felt every gaze upon her. They were watching. They were waiting, recording. Her knees trembled as she tried once more to rise from the floor. The marble beneath her palms was slippery with spilled champagne. Her breath came in short, desperate bursts. She murmured a plea to herself. "Please, stay strong. I have to get up." She pushed upward. Her arms trembled. Her belly tightened in a protective reflex. She managed to lift half her body before a wave of dizziness engulfed her. The chandelier lights blurred for a moment. She blinked hard, trying to focus on the world, but he never had the chance to fully stand up. Lucas's voice cut through the tension like a sharp blade. "Don't get up. I'm not finished with you yet. It's you." Emma froze, unable to breathe. Her heart was beating so hard, it hurt her chest. Estella was the first to move. She walked with a seductive slowness, as if this moment were a spectacle created for her entertainment. He circled Emma like a predator, sizing up its prey. His heels clicked softly. He stopped behind Emma, leaned in, and whispered, "You should have kept quiet." Before Emma could react, Estella raised her foot and kicked her hard behind the knee. The impact was cruel and calculated. Emma's leg gave way. She collapsed forward with a scream she couldn't stifle. A wave of gasps erupted from the guests. Some shuddered as if the kick had struck them. Emma fell to her knees. Pain shot up from her legs and down her spine. She clutched her stomach instinctively. Her breathing became ragged. The baby moved in response to the terror, but the attack wasn't over. Lucas advanced with a coldness that made several guests back away. He stood beside her, imposing himself on her small, trembling body. "You never learn," he said calmly. "You never listen." And with that, he lifted his foot and kicked her again. This time it hit her side so hard that her body doubled over. Her scream echoed through the great hall. It bounced off the marble and glass like a violent vibration. She fell sideways. Her cheek hit the polished floor. A woman near the dessert table covered her mouth and shook her head. She kicked her again. They both did it. "Someone stop them!" But no one stepped forward. Phones began to be raised higher. Some had started recording earlier, but now almost half the room had their cameras pointed at Emma as she curled up on the cold marble. A waiter whispered, "Oh my God, this is going to go viral. This is crazy." Another guest responded, "This surpasses anything I've ever seen. He's destroying himself." Lucas noticed the phones, but instead of stopping, he squared his shoulders and faced them arrogantly. "Record whatever you want," she said loudly. "She caused this scene, not me." Emma tried to speak, but her voice broke into a gasp. "Please, help," she said, extending a hand toward the crowd. Her fingers trembled uncontrollably. Estella snorted. "Look at her," she said, begging for attention. Emma struggled to lift her head. Her cheek was flushed, her hair plastered to her face in disheveled clumps. Tears blurred her vision. Even so, she looked at Estella with a raw mixture of pain and disbelief. "Why? I never did anything to you." Estella shrugged with casual cruelty. "You existed. That was enough." Lucas smiled contemptuously. "Stop talking, Emma. Every word you say makes you look worse." He leaned slightly toward her and added, "You've humiliated me one last time." Humiliated. As if his suffering were a nuisance, as if his pain were a stain on his image, and not the result of his violence. A man leaning against the wall muttered, "He's crazy. He's completely crazy." Emma tried to push herself up again. Her elbows trembled. Her vision spun as if the room were spinning. She felt a sharp pain in her side where Lucas had kicked her. She pressed her hand against the spot, afraid of feeling something worse. Fearing she might find blood, the baby moved again. A tiny flutter. A minuscule sign of life struggling to stay safe. Emma whispered, "I'm here. I'm here. Please hold on." But Lucas heard her whisper and rolled his eyes. Drama. Always drama. You can't even take a fall without making a spectacle of it. "Hazen." Estella laughed and waddled over. "Let me help her up," she said mockingly. Or really. She stopped, lifted her foot, and nudged Emma's arm with her heel. Maybe she should stay on the ground. Emma instinctively pulled her arm back, her breath caught in a panic. That small gesture changed something in the crowd. Some guests murmured with barely contained anger. A man took a step forward, but his companion stopped him, grabbing his arm, and murmured urgently, "No, not yet. No, she's not alone." Emma was still trembling. She gazed at the sea of faces before her. Some pitied her. Others were too afraid of Lucas to intervene. Still others simply watched the spectacle, as if it were a cruel act of theater. Tears streamed down her cheek. She felt trapped, powerless, exposed to people who valued their own safety more than her life. But then she noticed something else, beyond the crowd. Near the entrance, the door was ajar. In the reflection of the gleaming floor, A slight movement appeared. A shadow. A tall figure. A presence she recognized. A presence she had prayed for moments before when she thought she couldn't survive another second. She blinked hard, wondering if she had imagined it. But it was real. Lucas had no idea who was standing there on the threshold watching everything. He had no idea that his arrogance, his violence, and his cruelty had sealed his fate. And he had no idea that Emma's desperate plea was about to be answered in the most devastating way possible. The storm he thought he controlled no longer belonged to him. It was already here. Emma lay on the marble floor, her body curled up around her belly as instinct tried to protect the fragile life she carried within. Her world felt narrow and blurry, reduced to the cold beneath her cheek and the stabbing pain in her ribs. For a moment she thought she might lose consciousness. Her breath came in ragged gasps as she tried to draw air in. Her fingers moved involuntarily against the floor, desperate to grasp at something that felt stable. Around her, the room buzzed with fearful whispers and the faint murmur of phones recording every second of cruelty. She didn't want them to see her like this. She didn't want her suffering to become entertainment, but she couldn't stop it. Not yet. Lucas stood over her with the rigid posture of an annoyed, unrepentant man. Estella stood by their side like a glittering shadow, amused by the destruction they had wrought. The two of them had turned Emma's pain into a spectacle, and the crowd had become their audience. But amidst the humiliation, a strange warmth spread through Emma's chest. A small spark, a stubborn glimmer of something she hadn't felt in months. It wasn't anger. It wasn't strength. It was survival. It was the instinct to protect her baby at any cost. She inhaled sharply as she placed her palm on the ground. Her arm trembled. Her vision blurred again. The chandelier's light stretched out like trails of shooting stars. It flickered until the shape stabilized and the ground felt firm again. He forced himself to the advantage. Lucas noticed the movement and smiled contemptuously. "What are you doing? I told you to stay down. You can't even stand up on your own." Emma didn't look at him. Her attention was on her own body, on her own breathing. Her knee moved forward, her foot planted. The simple movement sent a wave of pain down her leg, but she gritted her teeth and endured it. He placed his other hand on the ground and pushed. Slowly, unsteadily, he rose until he was on his knees. Some people in the crowd gasped softly, not because she seemed strong, but because, after everything she'd been through, she was still trying to get up. Estella clicked her tongue. "Look at her. This is pathetic. Sit down before you faint." Emma's fingers clenched into tight fists. He continued breathing. In, out, deep, slow, painful. He felt the baby move again, a reminder that she couldn't stay on the ground any longer. Not anymore. She tried to stand up completely. Her legs trembled as if they didn't belong to her. The room tilted and spun. She gripped the edge of a table with both hands, pushed, her body swayed, but she kept going. Finally, she managed to stand. Her body trembled. Her breathing was ragged. Her hair was a mess, but she was standing. For the first time that night, the room stopped feeling like Lucas and Estella's property. The silence changed. It shifted. He waited. Emma raised her head. Her first word came out broken. She swallowed hard and insisted. "Enough," she whispered. The word floated through the room. It was soft, yet sharp, like a leaf cutting through fog. Lucas raised an eyebrow. "What did you say?" Emma braced herself with one hand on the table. Her chest rose and fell as her voice deepened. "Say stop." Estella laughed. The sound was cruel and sharp. "Or what? Do you think you can stop us?" Emma's eyes filled with tears, but she wouldn't let them fall. Not now. Not until I found the courage I'd lost so long ago. They won't hurt me again, she said. I won't allow it. Not anymore, Lucas scoffed. You have no authority over anything. Look at you. You can barely stand up. Emma inhaled deeply, clutching her stomach with both hands. I am standing now, and I will no longer be silent. A murmur rippled through the crowd. They sensed the change, the turning point of the moment. Lucas advanced, invading their space with the same right he always carried. You want to play this game? You think you have power just because you got up? Let me show you something. You're nothing without me. Emma looked at him directly. For the first time in months, she didn't look away. You're wrong, Estella rolled her eyes. Please don't start with dramatic speeches. You sound ridiculous. And so, Emma raised her chin. I'm not talking to you. She placed her hand on her chest. I'm speaking for myself, for my baby, for the life they tried to destroy. Estella's expression hardened. Lucas's jaw tightened. Emma continued, her voice trembling, but each word growing firmer. I trusted you. I loved you. I believed you would be a good father. But tonight, you showed me who you really are, and I'll never forget it. The guests shifted uncomfortably. Some even nodded. Estella's eyes narrowed. Lucas took another step toward Emma, but she raised her hand and said in a loud voice, Don't touch me. The command froze the room. Even Lucas stopped, surprised by the force in her tone. Emma took a deep breath. You think I'm weak. You think I'll keep letting you hurt me. But you're wrong. I'm done with fear. I'm done with you. Her voice broke with emotion, but the conviction behind it was firm. Estella snorted. So what are you going to do? Hang out of here. Emma controlled her breathing. She wiped her cheek with a trembling hand. I'm going to walk out, and you'll face what you did. Lucas laughed, but this time it was a nervous laugh, a laugh that tried to hide the first flicker of panic that crossed his face. Emma looked at him with an expression he hadn't seen in years, one thing that frightened him more than the tears. It was her. It was real her. Are you going to regret tonight? He said softly. I promise. A whisper rippled through the crowd. Someone murmured, She's not afraid anymore. Another person said, She's finally fighting back. Lucas pointed angrily at Emma. You can't threaten me. Emma shook her head. That wasn't a threat. It was the truth. For the first time all night, Estella took a step back. Something in Emma's voice, in her posture, in the change of atmosphere, made her nervous. Emma remained there, trembling but unfazed. A fragile woman transformed by grief into something strong and fierce. She had no idea that her courage had arrived at the exact moment she needed it most, because the door behind her creaked softly, and the people who loved her most were already crossing the threshold. The mansion's large double doors opened with a slow creak at first. No one noticed, not even Lucas. Neither Estella, nor the crowd that remained frozen after so much cruelty, noticed. But Emma did. She felt a change in the air. A faint warning brushed against the back of her neck, like a breeze before a storm. She turned her head slightly. Her vision was still blurry, but something inside her knew. Someone had arrived. Then the doors swung open. The sound was loud and commanding. Dozens of guests turned their heads toward the entrance. The conversations died instantly. Some phones went down. Even the chandelier lights seemed to hold back their brightness before settling. Two men stood in the doorway, tall, broad-shouldered. They radiated authority with an intensity that shattered the thick tension like a flash of lightning. The first one stepped forward. His mere presence caused several guests to step back without them even noticing. His gait was confident and steady. His jaw was tense. His eyes were cold and determined. He wore a dark tactical jacket that hinted at a life far from comfortable. A life shaped by danger, precision, and discipline. His name was Ethan Gray, Emma's older brother, a decorated Navy Special Operations officer. The second one stood beside her. He didn't dress like a soldier. He dressed like power personified. A navy blazer, a white shirt. A badge was discreetly tucked inside his coat. His expression was controlled, but a storm was brewing beneath the surface. He surveyed the room with the keenness of someone trained to recognize danger in seconds. It was Marcus Gray, Emma's other brother, a federal prosecutor with the United States Department of Justice. The guests stared at them, as if the very foundations of the mansion had shifted. Ethan's eyes found Emma instantly. His jaw tightened as he saw her tremble. He saw the bruise on her cheek. He saw her hand clutching her stomach. He saw the fear in her posture and the pain in her breathing. Yewugu saw Lucas. Ethan's expression changed completely. It hardened in a way that trained men recognize all too well. The kind of hardness that foreshadows trouble for the one who caused harm. Marcus noticed it too. Her eyes traveled from Emma to Lucas, and then to Estella. She noticed the raised phones. She sensed the fear in the crowd. He analyzed the scene like a lawyer building a case in real time. He exhaled slowly. Incredible. Estella was the first to speak. She crossed her arms and rolled her eyes. Who invited you? This is a private event. Ethan didn't even glance at her. He walked straight toward Emma with long strides that made the floorboards tremble. The guests parted like a breaking wave. Emma's lips trembled as she whispered, "Ethan? No, please." But he was already there. He knelt beside her and gently took her shoulders. His voice became as tender as only family can bring. "Em, are you hurt? Tell me everything." She shook her head weakly. "I'm fine. I think the baby is fine. They kicked me, Ethan. Twice. Both of them." Ethan froze, not physically, but internally. Something ignited within him. His eyes narrowed. His hand on Emma's arm gripped protectively, not forcefully. He stood up slowly. When he was fully upright, he faced Lucas with a look that had made men surrender in war zones. Lucas snorted, trying to hide the tremor in his voice. "Calm down. You have no idea what happened." Ethan stepped forward. "We saw everything." Lucas blinked. How is that possible? They just arrived. Marcus picked up his phone. The screen showed a paused live stream of the attack. People all over the internet watched it, including us. Someone in this room relayed everything, and it came straight to my table. "I saw you kick my sister. I saw your lover kick her while she was pregnant." An absolute silence filled the room. Marcus stepped forward, his expression sculpted from steel. "Lucas Hale, do you understand the gravity of what you've done?" Lucas's confidence wavered. "Marcus, listen, this is a misunderstanding." Ethan growled. "A misunderstanding is like tripping over a rug. Kicking a pregnant woman is a crime." Estella let out a nervous laugh. "Come on. She started it all. She tried to grab me." Marcus raised the phone higher. "This video says otherwise." He pressed play. The sound of Estella's kick echoed in the room, then Lucas's. Then Emma screamed, "This is irrefutable evidence. You can't talk your way out of this, Sekram." Lucas looked around, searching for someone to defend him. But no one met his gaze. Not even those who feared him would support him now. Ethan moved further forward. Lucas instinctively stepped back. For the first time that night, the arrogant millionaire seemed small. "You kicked my sister," Ethan said, his voice low and deep. "And then you did it again while she was begging." And as he shielded his son, Lucas swallowed hard. She was overreacting. "Emma." Ethan's jaw tightened so much that a vein popped out in his neck. "Say it again." Marcus placed a hand on Ethan's arm, not to stop him, to remind him. "We'll take legal action. Trust me." Then Marcus turned to Lucas with the unwavering confidence of a man who had destroyed men more powerful than Lucas from a courtroom bench. "You will be charged," he announced. "You will be arrested." Tonight, Estella's face twisted. Arrested? Why? Marcus looked at her with cold precision. Aggression. Assault. Aggravated assault against a pregnant woman. And depending on the medical report, possibly attempted harm to an unborn child. A collective gasp filled the room. Ethan looked directly at Estella. "And you touched my sister. You stepped on her. You'll be responsible for that." Estella stepped back. His arrogance vanished. "They can't do this." Marcus flashed his badge. "I can." "I will, and believe me, I'm just getting started." Lucas's face went completely pale. Emma, still trembling, whispered, "Ethan, Marcus, please be careful." Ethan looked at her tenderly. "We're here now. You're safe." Marcus nodded. "Nothing will ever hurt you again." At that moment, the whole room understood. The balance of power had shifted. The predators were no longer in charge. The storm had arrived. A tense silence filled the mansion as Marcus finished speaking. For the first time all night, Lucas Hale's confidence cracked. The arrogance that always enveloped him like a tailor-made suit began to unravel thread by thread. He looked around desperately, searching for even a single guest who would defend him. But no one stepped forward. Every face regarded him with contempt or avoided looking at him altogether. The powerful millionaire, who thought he controlled every room he entered, was now surrounded by witnesses who had seen everything and were no longer afraid to show their disgust. Estella clung to Lucas's arm. Her voice trembled. "Lucas, do something. Tell them they're wrong." Marcus stepped forward, his badge visible beneath his coat lapel. His tone was calm, but the power beneath his words was unmistakable. "We're not wrong, and you know it." He tilted his phone slightly. The paused live stream clearly showed Lucas kicking Emma as she fell. "This evidence will be news before the hour is over." A man in the background said loudly, "It already is." "Look." She held up her phone. On the screen, the comments were multiplying. Thousands. After scenes of thousands, clips of the attack circulated on social media. The media had already published it with headlines that read, "Millionaire caught assaulting his pregnant wife at a gala." End of tour. Another guest muttered, "His company is finished." Lucas's eyes widened. "Wait. No, you can't post that," she frantically told the guests. "Delete those videos. Can you hear me? Delete them right now." Nobody obeyed. 3 phones were pointed directly at him. 4 others to Estella. Recording. Transmitting. Saving. Ethan stepped forward with the intimidating presence of a man who had stared danger in the face countless times. "You spent the night threatening Emma. Now the world will finally see the truth." Lucas's hands began to tremble. "They can't ruin me like this. They have no idea who I am." Marcus smiled slightly. "I know exactly who you are. A man who believes money protects him from the consequences. A man who thinks the law is beneath him. A man who assaulted a pregnant woman in front of nearly 100 witnesses." She lowered her voice, "And tonight the law catches up with you. Emma!" Estella's voice rose in a hysterical scream. "This is unfair. She deserved it. She provoked us. She always does. The guests reacted instantly with a wave of indignation. A woman shouted, "How can you say that?" A man stepped forward. "We all saw what you did, twice." Estella backed away, as if the crowd had transformed into a wall pushing her back. She attacked me first, lied again, but her voice broke. She grabbed my dress. "Oh." Marcus played the video. The recording clearly showed Estella kicking Emma while she was defenseless. Some guests gasped again despite having seen it in person. Marcus stopped the video recording. Lying won't save him. The evidence is overwhelming. And this is just one angle. There are multiple recordings. Lucas's breathing quickened. He tugged at his shirt collar. Sweat appeared on his forehead despite the fresh air. They can't arrest me in my own home. I'm innocent until proven guilty. Ethan's voice boomed like distant thunder. You're forgetting something. This isn't just a moral disaster, it's a legal disaster. Marcus finished the thought. And when the police arrive, your house becomes a crime scene. The crowd parted, revealing 2 security guards from the mansion standing by the door. They looked nervous. One of them said quietly to Marcus, "Sir, the police are 2 minutes away." Several guests called them. I saw. Lucas turned his head furiously. Idiots. I pay their salaries. They should have stopped them. One of the guards swallowed hard and replied, "We're not going to intervene. Not after what we saw." Horror crossed Estella's face. They can't abandon us. The guard stepped back. We are cooperating with the authorities. Lucas's world suddenly shrank. He turned to the guests again. Calm down. This can be fixed. I'll donate money. I'll pay. Name a number. A woman near the bar responded harshly. You can't buy what you did. Lucas's voice broke. I didn't mean to hurt her. It was an accident. Everyone knows how emotional she gets. The crowd erupted in outrage. Someone shouted, "Stop lying!" Another man roared, "You kicked her when she was on the ground!" A woman added, "And she's pregnant, how dare you!" Lucas backed away as the angry crowd advanced. He tripped over a table and knocked over a vase that shattered on the floor. Estella grabbed his arm. "Lucas, say something. Fix it." But Lucas was lost. His pupils narrowed. His hands trembled. Her voice was stuttering. I didn't think it would go this far." Marcus positioned himself between them and Emma. His tone turned colder. Completely calm. Actions always go this far when you hurt innocent people. Ethan stayed by her side like a silent force. His mere presence conveyed a message that no one dared challenge. The front doors opened again. 4 police officers entered the room. The crowd automatically parted. The officers approached Marcus, who pointed to Lucas and Estella. Officer Ramirez spoke firmly. "Lucas Hull, Estella Rowan, we need both of you to step forward." Lucas raised his hands in panic. "Wait. Officers, this is a misunderstanding." "Empty." Ramirez continued. "They are being detained for questioning regarding the assault of a pregnant woman. They will come with us voluntarily, or we will place them under restraint." Estella shouted, "You can't arrest us!" Another officer responded, "We're not asking for permission." Lucas made one last desperate attempt. "Marcus, tell them to stop." Marcus took a step until he was just inches away from him. No. That calm refusal hit Lucas harder than any punch. In front of all the guests, in the same room where he had strutted arrogantly hours before, Lucas Hale's wrists were pulled back. The click of the handcuffs echoed off the marble like a final verdict. Estella was handcuffed next. Her screams turned into hysterical pleas, but no one came to her defense. The crowd watched in silence as the once powerful millionaire and his mistress were escorted out of the mansion. Every phone recorded their walk of shame. Emma, weak but still standing, watched them with tears glistening in her eyes. They weren't tears of fear. They weren't tears of pain. They were tears of liberation. The empire Lucas had built on arrogance and cruelty crumbled in less than an hour. Justice had taken its first step. The sirens had long since faded into the night. They left behind a hollow stillness that settled over the mansion like a final curtain. The ballroom, once brimming with laughter and glittering pride, now contained only scattered glasses, overturned chairs, and a lingering echo of the horrors that had transpired. The guests spoke in whispers as they left in small groups. Their faces were pale, shocked, and forever scarred by what they had witnessed. But Emma didn't see them leave. She was no longer in the living room. She sat on a cushioned bench in the private sitting room at the back of the mansion. Soft, yellow lights warmed the room, a stark contrast to the cold brutality of before. She inhaled slowly as she held a blanket over her shoulders. Her hands rested instinctively on her belly, feeling the rhythmic, gentle movement of the baby inside her. Each flap of her wings reminded her that, despite everything, she and her son were still here. They were still breathing. They were still alive. They were still fighting. Ethan stood by the door, arms crossed, his eyes scanning the hallway like a sentinel guarding a sacred temple. He hadn't let up since the moment he arrived. His jaw remained tense, his fists occasionally clenched at his sides. The protective ferocity of an older brother had not diminished even after Lucas and Estella were arrested. Marcus sat beside Emma, speaking quietly to a doctor who had arrived at the mansion after the police intervention. The doctor nodded and then smiled gently at Emma. "The baby is stable," he said in a warm, calm voice. "The stress was severe, but your vital signs are stable, and the baby's heartbeat is strong. You need to rest, and you must avoid any more scares like tonight's." Emma exhaled shakily. Relief washed over her like a warm tide. She closed her eyes for a moment, releasing all the fear she had kept inside. When she opened them again, she found Ethan's eyes gazing at her with a newfound tenderness. "Do you want some water?" he asked softly. She nodded, and he immediately disappeared to fetch it. Marcus placed a hand on her shoulder. "It's over, Emma." She swallowed hard. "Really?" "Yes," he said firmly. "Lucas and Estella will face all charges. The evidence is clear. The testimonies, the videos, the live stream, everything matches up. Even his own security personnel are cooperating. He can't escape, neither legally nor publicly." Emma let out a slow breath, allowing the truth to settle. For months, she had lived in Lucas's shadow, silenced, ignored, despaired, pushed to the brink of her own demise. That shadow had been shattered that very night, but the weight of the moment pressed on his chest. "I feel like I might wake up and discover this was just a dream." "A nightmare," Marcus corrected gently. "But you're awake, and you're safe." Emma nodded. Tears streamed down her cheeks. They weren't tears of pain or humiliation. They were tears of relief. She quickly wiped them away, embarrassed by so much emotion. Marcus offered her a handkerchief without a word. Ethan returned with a glass of water. He knelt before her and held it gently. "Drink," he said tenderly. She took it with trembling hands and drank slowly. The cold water soothed her throat and calmed her breathing. She looked at Ethan, gratitude shining in her eyes. "Thank you," she murmured. "You never have to thank me," he replied. His voice broke for the first time all night. "You're my sister." "I should have been here sooner." Emma shook her head gently. "You're here now. That's what matters." "Oh." A soft silence filled the room, a silence that brought not fear, but love and healing, the kind of silence that rebuilds. After a long moment, Marcus stood up. "I spoke with the officers," he said. "They need you to come in tomorrow to give your formal statement." "I'll be with you the whole time," Emma nodded. "I want to do it. I want to tell them everything." "You will," Marcus said, "and your voice will matter now, more than ever." Ethan clenched his jaw again, and after that statement, "He's coming with us." No more living here, no more being alone. Emma hesitated. "What about the mansion? The accounts?" Everything tied to him." Marcus shook his head. "Forget the mansion. Forget the money. Forget her power. You're going to build a new life, a better one, and we'll help you." Emma looked out the window. The moonlight bathed the ground like a soft path guiding her forward. She imagined what it would be like to live without fear, without shadows, without constant wounds. A life where her son would grow up safe, loved, and protected. She placed her hand on her belly again. "My baby deserves better." Marcus nodded firmly, "and that's exactly what he'll have." Ethan approached the door. "Let's go home. The officers will take care of the rest." Emma stood up slowly. Ethan immediately offered her his arm. She leaned on it. Her legs were still weak, but her spirit felt stronger than it had been in a long time. They stepped out into the hallway. The mansion, once a cage, now seemed like a place already beginning to fade into its past. Each step she took was a step away from the life she no longer wanted and toward the life she needed. Outside, the night air was cool and soft. The path was quiet, illuminated by garden lights. Police vehicles were still parked there. Reporters waited behind the fence, searching for every possible angle. But when Emma came out, Ethan stood in front of her, blocking the flashes. Marcus placed a gentle hand on her back. "Keep walking. Don't look back." Emma obeyed. He walked with his chin held high, his gaze fixed straight ahead. He didn't look at the mansion. She didn't search for Lucas's voice. She didn't cling to the memories. She just walked toward the car that was waiting for her, toward safety, toward freedom. As the car door closed behind her, Emma placed both hands on her stomach and whispered, "We're safe now. I promise." For the first time in months, she said it, and she truly meant it. Her brothers got into the car with her. The engine started smoothly. The mansion was behind them. Night enveloped them in a quiet peace. And as they walked away, Emma felt something she hadn't felt in a long time: hope.